So we're going to talk more of the business use cases. We're going to stay on the tokens just really quickly. I just want to get through some more of the things that we kind of ended with. And I want to get into some of the, I know the hardcore regulations might not be that interesting, but there's a lot of fascinating things that are happening in the crypto economy, internationally, nationally, and what it means. One thing, let's talk about the practical uses for tokens or cryptocurrencies. Talk about, well, first of all, is it a good idea at this point, or maybe 5 years from now, to accept Bitcoin? Does anybody want to take that? Like, is it safe to take?
No.
If I accept it, is it going to go down the next day and I lose all the money? It's like, so talk about accepting Bitcoin for my business.
You have to look at it, first of all, at the level of risk you want to take. But I will say something interesting about this whole movement and this whole cypherpunk into Bitcoin, into blockchain, it is still somewhat of a small community still, and it is a very engaged community. And I have read about coffee shops or small retail stores that have decided to accept Bitcoin, and their business grew 300–400%, simply because there are enough people in this community who want to support the use of those things and want to support those businesses. Now, should you be taking Bitcoin for $20,000 projects? If they want to pay you in Bitcoin, maybe you should. If you have the ability to convert that Bitcoin because you want to mitigate your risk, you can convert that Bitcoin almost immediately into US dollars on an exchange. So there are use cases where you can do that, but it's all about managing your risk and what you're comfortable with.
I think that the climate is still so volatile with not knowing how things will play out. So Goldman Sachs this morning announced that they are not going to be following through with their crypto trading desk that they had been planning. And so this is big news. And so this is what we would call a negative to cryptocurrency in general, or to the legitimacy of it. And so if I'm a retailer and I want to accept coins, and all of a sudden I find out that a major organization, a major trusted financial organization decided, we're going to put this on hold. The reason that they put it on hold is because it's unclear how the legal and regulatory issues are going to resolve. And so until there's clarity with that, I think that building a cryptocurrency, something like a credit card system that people can just walk into for retailers, for regular retailers like coffee shops, pizza shops, the guys that you'd find on Main Street, I think that it's a risky maneuver. I think, however, if someone were to focus on the gambling industry or other verticals in which people want to remain anonymous, right? So think of the places that people might go that they don't really want any kind of record, or transaction that they were actually there. I think that there might be a better opportunity right now. It kind of, unfortunately, brings like this seedy underbelly or connection to like cryptocurrency, and it really shouldn't be that way. But there's a difference between people that are trading crypto because they're speculating about what it might be worth in the future, and people that are trading or trying to acquire cryptocurrency because they can actually use it right now. So you spoke earlier about, in Iran and other countries, there's such a premium on it because they can actually use it. But right now, if you have Bitcoin in your wallet, what can you buy? What store are you going to go to? You can't walk into the Apple store right at this moment and buy your MacBook Pro with it. And so I think that until the regulation and the legal stuff gets worked out, I think that it's going to continue to be this up and down. Every other month there's some new positive information, and all of a sudden there's a big negative piece of information.
I think what we're seeing is, right now the infrastructure has to be built out. And not only that, it's like the very early days of the internet. Remember when people, I know my aunt called me, she said, never put the credit card on the internet, right? And now everybody, they don't even think about it, puts the credit card on the internet. The infrastructure has to be built out, security. More importantly, people never talk about this, the user experience has to be built out. It's really hard. It's kind of easy to buy Bitcoin. Other than that, all the other ones, very difficult, almost impossible for like a novice to do it. And so the user experience, like at a business, if you guys are going to take business, there has to be something where it's so easy that your employees can easily do that. But that's coming. That's what these ICOs were kind of doing there. The infrastructure was being built out, and that's kind of all the what was happening.
Well, didn't this go back to what David said about trust? I mean, we've got an entire town in Manchester, New Hampshire, that Main Street is running on Bitcoin. And like Bitcoin ATMs, and people are driving from other states to secure a wallet. So it is happening, but wouldn't it come down to whether you're going to trust this or not, and who's going to be those first people to run with it?
Sir, and those are, and even in that town, it's got to be early adopters that are doing it, right? I mean, I can't imagine everybody's doing it. Trust is a huge component of this, just as a new technology. But that's the beautiful part of the blockchain is it's all about trust, transparency. You're able to trust the data and trust the transactions because humans can't be. So it's certainly a good point.
Yeah, let me just, Scott, and then I'll grab you. It's actually a little bit more subtle than that. I mean, if you look at the two hallmarks of currency, put aside durability, as a third, and there's a few others. It's got to be readily exchangeable, and it's got to be price stable. And so, and the exchange portion of it incorporates trust, but not trust from a security standpoint. Your Bitcoin might be extremely secure, but if nobody wants it, the fact that it's locked in the safe is irrelevant. So, for the user experience, certainly part of it, that facilitates the exchange, but ultimately, the biggest impediment to this being widely adopted, certainly in this country right now, is that, as Lindsley, as you quipped, the coffee house could take the Bitcoin and immediately change it for US dollars. That means you want to get out of it as fast as possible so you can get into a currency that is readily exchangeable and is price stable, because your concern would be right now, since the laws of supply and demand, basic economics, affect cryptocurrency far differently than they affect a government-backed security, where the government, albeit artificially, if you trust the government, and we can say this from the U.S. and Western countries, is looking out for the general welfare of its occupants, of its citizens, and of the overall economy, then it looks to do things that prevent this. It wants a very gentle wave. Inflation goes up a little bit, inflation goes down a little bit. But you don't want spikes.
But with a specific question of should you accept it, right? I could make the case that if somebody wanted to pay me that would otherwise not do business with me, purely incremental business, and wanted to pay me in shoelaces, but I knew I could immediately turn those shoelaces into US dollars,
you do it.
I'd do that deal.
Exactly.
As an entrepreneur, I would do that deal.
Yeah, and I actually want to piggyback on that. That's the question I wanted to get to. There was a time when credit card acceptance wasn't the
Right.
right? Mm-hmm. And merchants took the risk on the 4 points that they were using for that transaction to procure the business. And even now, there are in retail, there are gas stations that bifurcate their pricing strategy, right? So it's $1 or it's $1.15 as a function of whether you're paying with cash or credit. So I can envision a time not too far off where people will advertise, we'll gladly accept Bitcoin because they'll get the incremental business and it won't be disruptive enough to their underlying revenue stream where that risk would be worth it a certain way.
Right, well, Scott, the way the U.S. government solved the equation of getting people to believe that this $1 bill, this piece of paper, that in of itself is worthless, was to back it by gold. And then once once the country believed that, you could still, in theory, go in and exchange your dollar for gold. But if everybody in the country simultaneously said, I want my gold, then the value of the dollar goes to zero.
Yeah, but full faith and credit in the U.S. government is not appreciably different than a highly confident letter that what's it, was it milk that used to issue, right?
Yeah.
He created-
But that's true.
Value out of nothing.
Right.
Because he was right that way.
Yeah,
This seems to me to be kind of that next thing.
yeah, for sure.
Name, talk,
Yeah, Tom's got a question.
Do you think there's enough Bitcoins, much like Wall Street on the sideline, that as business owners, we could accept it and pick up a couple of points by charging extra for it,
yes, I think so.
as opposed to cashing it in the banks?
Yeah, I mean, again, to a willing seller, sure.
Yeah, willing buyer, willing seller,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
I actually think the more interesting discussion is not about Bitcoin at all. Because I think Bitcoin is sort of, it is a store of value, it's digital gold. I think the way more interesting discussion is creating real cryptocurrencies that will trade and that will be used as a medium of exchange when Alibaba and Amazon and Apple create their currencies, and they will. Those currencies will be larger than the currencies of virtually
Right.
every
Right.
other
Because
nation in the
they're
world.
their own economies.
Right.
In
Exactly
itself.
right.
I mean,
Right.
that's
And
exactly
you
right.
see
So-
this happening,
Yeah.
right? You see it happening
sure.
in the
I agree
political
with that.
environment that we're in, where companies are disagreeing with policies that are established by government, and you see companies so large at this point that they're almost beyond the reach
Yeah.
of government. And
not only are they their own economies, but they already have our faith and trust.
absolutely.
That's-
I mean, that's the thing, right? I mean, if John's billiard hall decided to create a currency, I doubt that anyone here is going to be willing to rely on that as a medium of exchange for the
Yeah.
reasons we talked about. But if Amazon and
For sure.
Alibaba and companies like that all do it,
You pile in.
you know, it's just absolutely incredible when you think about what can happen.
Yeah.
Part two of my question is, with the volatility in the market being so much, it seems like a tremendous opportunity for like day traders. Just
Oh, it is.
Well, that's what, yeah,
Sure.
there are
Quite a
crypto
bit.
funds today. I mean, that's all
Yeah.
they're, you know.
It is
they're
and
all
it
doing
isn't,
day trading.
right? Because, you know, if you want to be married to your computer where it's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week market. So,
Yeah, but the young kids do. They do want to be married to their computer, right? The
but
day traders.
the thing is,
It's
there's
done
a-
in
there's a-
software
there's-
also.
There's a lot of.
Yeah, it's auto traded.
There's a lot of things that preclude you from being able to make a lot of money as the arbitrage windows close quickly because it is a global,
I mean,
effective.
crypto traders they deal with bands and technical analysis. They have all that stuff that the stock traders do. They're analyzing all that. They talk about, Bitcoin's has a $6,400 bottom and it'll start to bounce up. They're doing all that stuff. It's kind of amazing.
It's no different from day trading.
Yeah, for
stocks.
sure.
Let's talk about practical uses for cryptocurrencies with businesses. If I am going to tokenize my companies, or if I'm going to make my company, put my company on the blockchain, create a token economy so that people can buy things, what kinds of businesses are best for that right now? What's practical uses? Micropayments? What kinds of things? Vishal, I know you're very into these businesses, and Josh.
Yeah. I think there are two parts to it. First is what kind of businesses can use blockchain as a technology. And second is what kind of businesses can use blockchain as a technology and use tokens as a means of something of value. So the first part is relatively simple, which is what kind of companies can have blockchain as a underlying technology or underlying substrate, right? So if we look 20 years back, networking, internet, websites, 10 years back, mobile app, 2008, 7, 6, iPhone apps, everything is now like everyone wants to build app. Like iOS platform has become the standard. 5 years down the line, maybe like we talk about MySQL database or any other database, blockchain will become the de facto database because it is immutable, transparent, all of that. So that revolution is already happening. Companies will adopt and make those changes. Some of them will be early adopters and some of them will be not early adopters. Eventually they will be pushed to adopt it. But that's the easier part. Now, who will be the early adopters depends on several use cases. For example, does the application has a need for strong trust? Does the application has a need for traceability or transparency? For example, in pharmaceutical business, you would have heard about lot of patents from Walmart or Whole Foods about tracking food, organic food coming from different countries and being traced until the last mile. Why is that? Because we want to trace everything using IoTs on a blockchain kind of database so that me as an end user can go and see where is the apple that I'm buying is coming from and what were the checkpoints that it was being transferred, right? So, and that is a use case which made it more popular, but really the pharma use case and like other ERP and supply chain use cases are the one which will be the early adopters of blockchain as an application, as an underlying substrate or database. With that, I'll slightly segue into the token aspect of blockchain applications. Now, the token aspects could be things like loyalty points. Like I have a store, and so some companies might use tokens to give loyalty points or rewards or whatnot, and some companies might create a system to enable other companies like SaaS businesses to create those or use those systems. Similar to how Ethereum smart contract or virtual machine works. The thing with the token-based models is you really have to think about the incentives, which came up several times here. Like what is the incentive, and why is the value of the token, or if I'm giving token to the end user, why is the value of the token, or what's the incentive for the end customer to hold the token, and what can they do with the tokens later on? So it's a slightly different, but it has lots of use cases, but once you get into token, then you also start thinking about securities and utilities and the inherent value of holding the token and how do you gain the token, and the business problem becomes much complex in that sense, because you're now thinking about creating a new business as opposed to using the blockchain as a technology for an existing business. So I would say that's the distinction that we should make all the time. Like in my own startup, I'm using blockchain as a technology. I don't want to worry right now about what's the incentive model. I don't know if that will work or not, but I need to focus on my current customers, give them more trusted. Like one of the books has, the companies will be disrupted by more trusted versions of their own companies, was the headline of the book that I saw on the thing. When I'm building for my own products, I'm thinking first, how can I use blockchain as a technology to make the system more transparent for the end user, for the end customer, so that they can get the full value out of the product that they are using today. But several other entrepreneurs are disrupting by creating new incentive models on top of Uber and Lyft and like ticketing systems and loyalty point systems, and you name it, it's everywhere.
Yep, you could have it like an Uber on blockchain. They're building an Airbnb on blockchain. They're building a Dropbox on blockchain. They're building all this stuff. They'll be, as he said, more trusted versions of what's out there. And those companies can probably charge a premium because they'll be more trusted. If you know your apple is coming from Peru and it's fair trade and it's organic and it is definitively viewable through the blockchain that apple traveled in this, and everything was appropriate, maybe you charge 10 cents more for that apple and people will do it. Right now, they slap on organic or fair trade. Nobody knows if it really is. So that's.
I think you made. I was going to say. I think you made a really good point about differentiating between using blockchain and or using crypto, because I think in the short term, a lot of the real use cases that will solve problems are going to be things that don't involve a cryptocurrency. It's going to be using the blockchain and the power of that technology immediately to do things like, like I said earlier, Sweden's putting their title registry, on the blockchain as a way to reduce the costs, and they'll save a lot of money by doing that. That doesn't involve a cryptocurrency, but they're utilizing that.
Josh?
Sure. So speaking to the difference between using blockchain and crypto and using blockchain just as a regular piece of your technology strategy. So my company, Teliapp, we built an artificial intelligence engine, which you can think of as kind of like a brain, that can detect, analyze, and predict human behavioral trends. The most valuable thing to us is our production server. That's the brain. That's where it all sits. Well, not yet. That's the brain. That's where it all sits. And so for us, I guess you could say one of our security concerns is what if that thing is eventually hacked? Or what if someone else is somehow able to push code to our production server, right? So for us, that's a problem. So we use blockchain in order to track code from our test servers to our production server, trying to ultimately eliminate the potential for someone that does not have access to the production server to actually get code up there. So that's how we're using blockchain on a regular basis as part of our company's strategy, just to maintain security. So that's answer. I think the first thing that you were looking to get
And that doesn't
from me.
involve any kind of cryptocurrency?
No, nothing at all. Now, we happen to be crypto enthusiasts. We've been watching it for as long as it's existed, and when everyone started getting all crazy excited about it, so did we. And so we started saying, we're always looking for use cases. Can we get the engine to predict this? Or can we get the engine to predict that? And so the logical question for us was, can we get the engine to predict which coins are going to go up and which ones are going to go down, right? The engine loves data, right? So one of our first use cases was in social media, just because the data was free. We could have as much data as we want from Instagram and from Twitter, and we were able to predict what types of stores a person is more likely to go into. So when it came to crypto, it was a little more interesting to us. Hey, could we actually predict which ones will go up and which ones will go down? And so the question really was, at the time there were like 1,900 coins, which ones trend together, right? So the idea was, if Bitcoin and Ethereum and Ripple are going up on some kind of sliding scale by between 7 and 12%, maybe Cardano or Stellar Lunar, which are lesser known coins, will all of a sudden take a 30% dip, right? And so knowing this information in advance would be great. And so we wrote a program that kind of did this. We started in November when everyone started to get crazy, and so we kind of sidetracked from our core mission, what we do. And for about 2 months, we built this the user interface is ugly, but we didn't really care because it's just us using it. And so and it was able to do just that. It turns out that yes, there are cryptocurrencies that trend together, and so in a very simple regression kind of prediction model, you're not factoring in data that's coming in from external factors, but we wanted to do that. So we had data coming in from Google, we had information coming in from Reddit, we had information coming in from Twitter. So anytime there was like a specific word trending, the software the engine had to determine, is this a positive? There are like 3 levels, right? There's positive, there's really impact, there's positive impact, no impact, and negative impact. What type of article is this, based on some words or things that that we can actually measure upon? And so we did this thing, and so it didn't have any type of really pretty user interface. So I had to visualize. So we would see a trend, right? So a trend is like when a group of things is happening in a place and a time, and then something else happens in some other place and time, and there's some sort of correlation. So in order to visualize this, we had to get a whole bunch of monitors, and of course I put them at my desk. And so on the top left, it's kind of a small picture here, you can't really see it, but if you look really closely, you can actually see these coins that are trending together, and it was really quite fascinating. And it turns out that there was relationships and correlations between which coins trend together, when they trend together. And we learned a lot about things like predicting when people are waking up in the morning and getting to their computers and all of a sudden, starting to trade, right? So why is this thing taking a dip? Did something bad happen? No, maybe just everyone went to sleep.
Yeah, everyone in Korea went to sleep.
Exactly.
The Americans
Right.
haven't woken up yet.
Exactly. And so there's all these types of things happening at the same time. Then you've got positive articles coming out, negative articles, neutral articles. And so you have all this stuff happening at the same time. At one of those points, I was just playing Minecraft because I was just like watching it and so fascinated.
How much money did you make? Come on, get
Right,
it.
so
How do we get in?
So so as a frugal, really cost-conscious startup that has angel capital, angel investors, we're not taking their hundreds of thousands and putting it, unfortunately, into this. We would have made 16% more than we had put in had we actually used real money and not like, fake money. And there are things you have to think about, like is speed of transaction important? What are the fees associated with trading and transactions? All these things have to be factored in. So we did not develop a commercial ready product, nor were we supposed to. And we kind of stopped messing around with this in June.
If you
But-
sold that as a subscription model, you could make the models self-perpetuate.
Right, so, yeah, so
That's nice.
if you want to cut me, if you want to cut a check for us to continue developing this, happy to talk.
Mark,
Yeah.
if we can, I'd like to bring this down a little bit to real, actual use cases that companies are using, where companies are using blockchain right now. You mentioned traceability, right? The pharmaceutical industry is regulated and they have to be able to trace every pill from manufacturing to end user. And millions upon millions of dollars have been spent over the last 10 or so years by software companies to develop software solutions so that pharmaceutical companies can adhere to the regulations. And boom, blockchain comes, and blockchain is a far more cost-efficient way to adhere to the regulations. So we have pharmaceutical company clients who are now developing blockchain solutions to replace the software that's been developed over the last 10 or 15 years. I'm currently representing a Fortune 200 company that is considering it, it's in the supply chain. Right, so when you think about, let me back up. I don't know, I think we've said this earlier, but blockchain is a great disintermediation force, where historically we needed all of these people in the middle to aggregate and to bring product together or bring information together, etc. Blockchain allows you to eliminate all the guys in the middle. Someone said about democratization. It's the ultimate in connecting the beginning to the end, the manufacturer to the end user. So it's being used in supply chain. It's being used in fintech. Banks, private equity firms, other kinds of institutions are recognizing that blockchain poses an existential threat.
Yes.
Because they're intermediaries. So they have two choices. They can pretend it's not happening, which is like standing at the beach and saying, I don't want the waves to hit the shore, or they can change their underlying business processes. That's exactly what's happening today in fintech. You mentioned earlier Humanity. Humanity is the company that is applying blockchain and smart contracts and cryptocurrency to allow people like us to decide what happens with our own healthcare data, our own financial data, our own consumer preference data. These are today. This is happening right now. Blockchain applications happening from small companies to Fortune 100
I
companies.
want to talk about that in real quick, the Humanity example. Imagine what happens if, like, people start selling your medical data, which they are, right? And even though it's worth hundreds, it's probably worth hundreds or thousands of dollars a year. Every guy that buys it, or everything that buys it, they're only going to really pay you $1, or maybe it's only worth $1, like, for every time, right? So there's this micropayment issue. That's why a lot of this stuff comes, it is all combined. You could say there's no, blockchain, you could use it without the cryptocurrencies and all that stuff, and you can. But a lot of times cryptocurrencies are vital to within an economy, because micropayments are a critical factor of things you could do. There might have been things that you would have had to sell subscriptions for, like the newspapers had to sell $10 a month, or Netflix had to sell, $10 a month subscriptions because it's not worth it to charge you, 50 cents a movie for Netflix, or every time I read an article, it's 5 cents. It's just not possible to do it with the credit card system today. So, you have that ability of micropayments with cryptocurrencies too. Is there any?
Well, I got a good example that's being worked on now, which I think is really interesting. One of the things that a lot of people fear about things like blockchain technology is that it's going to take away jobs, or it's going to, it could eliminate or reduce, our ability to make money. And actually, I think it presents a tremendous amount of opportunity. this was one business case that I was reading about that I think is really interesting, is computers. So all of us have computers at our house, all of us have multiple computers at our house, and all of those computers have processing power. And for roughly probably 19 to 23 hours a day, that computer is not using its processing power because you're not using it. Well, what if we could create a blockchain company or a blockchain technology that will allow you to sell your processing power while you're downtime, while you're asleep? And you can wake up in the morning and you can get paid through some type of a token or some type of a unit of value for that processing power.
They already exist.
Yeah,
out there.
that's happening, and that's happening, and that's iterating right now to a point where we think, you know, it could be out there to the general public, meaning the Tom, Dick, and Harry down the street, to be able to sell their processing power. I mean, the other thing I'll say is, you know, being in the accounting industry, Deloitte is the largest accounting firm in the world, and when you think about you know, large firms that are leaders in terms of consulting, they have 2,000 employees whose only job it is to understand, investigate, and proliferate blockchain technology, right? So like you talk about the healthcare industry and how they're investing in it. The best way to know about whether or not something is going to really take hold is just to look around and see who the big players are and whether or not they're willing to invest in it. And I think everywhere you look, you'll see it. So I think it's just a matter of, you know, when it's going to trickle in. You know, Bill Gates said, you know, we always tend to overestimate the short-term, you know, impact and underestimate the long-term impact, and I think that that's what a lot of these are. You know?
That's a great line. We only have like 10 minutes or so, or a little bit less.
6 minutes.
A little bit less. I want to talk about if you know, in the past you wanted to incorporate or do whatever, you know, the big choice was Delaware for whatever reason, which you guys can talk about. But there's new places that are becoming important. If you want to have blockchain technology or have a token economy, Wyoming just put together this set of laws that really make it super advantageous to incorporate there. And I want Chris, I think you know, or Kurt, whatever, talk about the regulations or how you can register your company as a blockchain company. Why would we go to Wyoming or Georgia or Arizona?
So just we have about 4.5 minutes. So Wyoming did something that seems unique, but isn't really. They're giving tax breaks. Yeah, so what Wyoming did is they said, we have I think the population of Wyoming is like 550,000 people. That's the entire state. It's a pretty big state. So needless to say, there's not a big tax base there. There's not a lot of jobs. They have good energy and natural resources. What does blockchain consume? Lots of energy and natural resources. So as a way to basically bolster their economy, they said that there's no tax on cryptocurrency at the state level as you dispose of it. And so it's really no different than like New Jersey's got various tax incentives. If you build in an economically depressed area, you get tax credits or tax breaks for a certain period of time. That's what Wyoming's done, and you know, I think it's a smart move. It's just recognizing that they've got resources that make their energy more cost efficient, which makes it more cost efficient to attract this type of business to your economy.
And even if you throw out the tax piece and just look at the
energy, right.
Well, just look at the legal side, right? We always see that new technologies come about, and it takes a while for the law to catch up with the technology. Right. And when you look at things like smart contracts and doing transactions in a blockchain-based economy, states that look at their legal code and how they recognize those transactions and deal with them and address those sooner have a chance to attract businesses, because there's less doubt about, will my business or will my transaction be supported in the court of law versus.
Well, here's a great example of that. I know this, you know, our worlds are very much the same. You know, digital signatures, which are now widely accepted. I'm sure everyone in the room here has DocuSigned a document. You know, that took a change in the law. First there was ink, then there was the fax machine, and then it evolved to digital signatures. So when you get into smart contracts, which are not written in the way that we think of contracts, where there's a document that's many pages long, and, you know, there are still instances where you will probably have to enforce a smart contract and have it recognized in a jurisdiction in which you're seeking to enforce it. And that's yet, I mean, that's just still evolving, because in a lot of ways, you don't even have something tangible to walk into a court of law and say, you know, I want to enforce what's in here. It's in here. Just trust me.
But the legislatures that can get around to
Right.
addressing that in their law sooner than rather
Absolutely.
than later.
Make
This
themselves more
is so cool.
attractive.
Take
Yeah.
this back, right? We're sitting here talking to you guys, and I believe that every one of your businesses will be impacted by blockchain and smart contracts. But you know what? Kurt and I, and I'm sure you think about this too, because we live in a similar world. I'm at a very, very large law firm, and I have said, I'm part of the management team of that law firm, and I have said to my own law firm, 20 years from now, instead of needing 500 lawyers, we're going to be 50 lawyers, because automation and legal tech and smart contracts are going to change the way we do business as well. Kurt's point is spot on. 5-10 years from now, we're all going to think how quaint it is that we once wrote contracts using the English language.
Yeah.
Because contracts are going to be written in code.
And printed them on paper.
Oh yeah, but how ridiculous is that?
I mean, Dave, when was the last time you literally took a letter, folded it up, put a stamp on it,
Never.
and sent it? Right.
We
I mean,
only-
you can't,
guys,
why
we only
was
had
it?
Last time
Right.
I billed for that.
I'm going to play Donald Trump for a second. Remove that man. Remove that man.
Before we got a minute left. Chris, it's important. I know when the internet started, everything was tax-free, and we just say everybody buy into. Is there any tax implications of?
Okay, you got 1
Except-
minute.
In a minute.
In 1 minute. All right.
It's 30 seconds by the time you get to the
Is
question.
there anything that's like that dawned at the beginning of the internet? Is there any advantages that we could take by
That's easy.
creating
No.
a blockchain company or accepting Bitcoin? I mean, are we getting away with anything?
I'm gonna say, I'll keep this short. It was the Wild West for the last probably 7 years. It's becoming substantially less wild than it has been in the past as the IRS is starting to get their arms around crypto, and they're getting cooperation from exchanges that will disclose how people are, like what the trading patterns are, and exchanges are now issuing 1099s. So it's just like on the legal side where, you know, it's slow and it's taking a long time, but there's going to be like kind of brackets put around it. There's not substantial benefit. I mean, as somebody mentioned before, cryptocurrency is deemed to be property for purposes of the IRS, which means that basically whenever you exchange it, whether it's for dollars, peanuts, or other crypto, it's a taxable event. And that's kind of just the short answer.
All right, so, you know, we put this panel together to hopefully give you guys a better understanding of blockchain and cryptocurrencies and tokens of the economy. These are all important issues. Your business is going to have to think about it. Think about what that book said, the Richie Aguaro. All businesses will be replaced by trusted versions of themselves. Blockchain technology can make your business a trusted version, give you transparency to your clients and things like that. So thank you to the panelists. I appreciate you guys.